powered by Riverside FM.
Welcome to the Science Edit, the podcast that breaks down the trickiest parts of science and helps you get it right when it matters most. I'm Miss Lima, and I'm here to support you with the science you need when you need it. Whether you're revising for exams, exploring future careers, or just trying to figure out why your last test didn't go so well, you're in the right place. Let's dive into our next episode. Today's episode is all about making science revision work for you. I'm joined by 3 Year 12 science students who've been through the GCSE Science journey and come out the other side. We'll be chatting about the revision strategies they found genuinely helpful and the things that didn't quite work. Whether you're just getting started with GCSE Science or are just looking for ways to revise more effectively, this episode is for you. So gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
So when you started revising for GCSE Science, what topics did you prioritise and what made you focus on those topics?
I started revision for GCSE Science at around the year 10 point. After my initial mocks, I wanted to reflect a lot on how those went, and that's what determined what topics I prioritised to work on my weak areas and improve on those.
Yeah, I think I was definitely the same. It was that looking at the tests you'd already done and the ones leading up to those mocks that we'd had, because I spent a lot of time focusing on those points before those mocks, and then it was coming out and seeing, well, I've worked on those bits and either they're still weak or I've moved on from them, or, you know, there's new things I need to now work on. So it was looking at all the different topics.
Did that happen a lot when you're like, you've spent a lot of time revising a topic and then you're like, I didn't do as well in that as I thought?
I think it was that I now understood the content, but either I didn't know how to apply it, or the questions I was practicing were too easy and they didn't challenge my way of thinking, or sometimes you get the questions which cross topics over, and I think that really increased the difficulty of it.
That's higher level demand for science, isn't it? Having those synoptic links as well.
Yeah.
So in terms of the 3 different sciences, did you approach biology, chemistry and physics differently when it came to revision?
I want to say that for physics, my revision was definitely more focused on the more sort of like mathsy side, learning how to use the different equations, because at that point we weren't really sure if we were going to get the same equation sheet, which I know that the current year 11s and the future ones won't be getting. So for me, it was more focused on learning how to apply those different equations, whereas for biology, it was definitely more about learning all of the different content, building those synoptic links out, and understanding why everything sort of clicked into place.
Yeah, I think that with biology specifically, there are a lot of application questions compared to maybe physics and chemistry, which they still contain application questions, but are much more recall based, let's say. So for chemistry particularly, I did a lot of recall sheets, and that really aided my revision because it meant that with the 1 markers, 2 markers, you can easily gain those sorts of marks, and it means you can spend more time in the exam working on the questions that make you think more.
100%. I think the key thing with the exam is not burning out too early. It's you don't want to spend your energy on those questions, which should just be easy recall, straight down, what's the definition of this, write it down, move on. And I think if you don't have that kind of basis through that recall, like you said, chemistry is really, really heavily based on recall, especially at GCSE. And if you don't have that, you get to the end of the paper, or you get a 6-mark question, and you're just frazzled when you get there. You're like, I've now got to come up with this massive answer.
It's interesting that recall has come up so early in this conversation because, it's such a really content-heavy subject. Are there any tricks that you learn to, get that recall, things like mnemonics, etc.?
In chemistry particularly, I used one called oil rig, which is oxidation is loss and reduction is gain. Yeah. And even at A-level, that helps me quite a lot to understand oxidation and reduction equations.
Yeah, I think that they also, because you learn them and they get ingrained in your head, they carry through straight to the next set of exams that you do, even if that's past GCSE. So having them as a basis, and then when you go into A-levels and things, they really kind of, you build on top of the content you already know. So having those mnemonics solidify that base.
When I teach classification, I always tell my students my mnemonic for a classification, which is keep pond clean or froggy gets sick for kingdom, fund, class, order, family, genus, species. But I also make it really clear that actually I think the mnemonic needs to be yours, because if it's somebody else's mnemonic, it's sometimes difficult because you haven't created that. So sometimes it's actually worth the time. It may seem silly, but it's worth taking the time to create your own.
I also do feel like the more sort of like wild and wacky the mnemonic is, the better and the longer you'll learn it. Because funnily enough, some of my friends who the mnemonics I work with them tend to be slightly more inappropriate because I just stuck in their heads a little bit more. And if it makes you laugh and if it works, you know?
Exactly. We had loads from a chemistry teacher. We probably had 6, 7, 8 that we went through, and it was just test each week, just go over them. Do you know them? Whiteboard work, and you can do all those things at home. But like you said, if they give you a mnemonic and you tend to know straight away if you're going to remember it or not. So you kind of sit there, you hear a new mnemonic, and sometimes you're okay, I think I'll get that, or sometimes you're like, that's going to take me a bit of time to learn. And I think if you're thinking that initially, this is going to take me a long time to learn, change it. So keep the same basis, maybe the same topic. Let's say it's about food or something like that, or ponds and frogs and things, but make something that kind of comes naturally out your head. Yeah. So in that exam, when you're in the pressure, it's nice and easy.
Yeah. What about things like mind maps and diagrams and colour coding? I always think that works really well in science, but actually, as students, did that work for you?
Definitely. I think that for biology, there are a lot of topics that cover all the smaller things that you've been learning throughout the year, and it's important to link them all together. And I'm quite a visual learner, and I'm sure lots of students are too.
Same here.
So drawing it out in one big piece of paper can really help you to bring things together and visualise it in a concise manner.
Yeah, I think definitely. And I hate doing it because it shows how little I know about a topic. But before you do any revision, write down absolutely everything you can think of, even if you don't think it's in the topic. The amount of times I've gone, I don't think that's in that topic, I think it's from something else, and I've written it down, and then I've gone, hang on a minute, that's exactly what it was, but I'm still missing gaps. And then you go in, like you said, with the colour coding and different things, and you go in and you replace everything that you missed. And it's so easy to then cover that up, put it away, put it in your bag, get a new piece of paper and write everything out again and see if you can do it in a week, and then make revision cards on what you missed. And I think it's a really good way to start revising a topic because it gives you your starting point and what to revise rather than just trying to do the whole thing.
What about the required practicals? Because obviously a large proportion of your papers across all 3 sciences are going to be on those. So did you focus on those in particular at first, or did they kind of like come in along the way as you did topics?
So I feel like for the required practicals, actually watching YouTube videos online, seeing how different people did the practicals and sort of relearning how they went step by step and then turning those into flashcards really helped ingrain them, because throughout your GCSE Science sort of like some section of your life, you go over so many different practicals, and at the time I kind of thought, it's a practical, it's going to be fun, we're going to have a bit of a laugh, learn something along the way. But towards the end, you have to sort of go over them, making them into flashcards, like, this is what I need to get down, this is what I need to know, because at the end, while the practicals might be fun, they're also key content in your GCSEs.
And analysing them as well, being able
100%.
to actually be confident enough with what you're looking at that you can actually analyse it well.
Yeah, I think having a way that worked for me was, like you said, watching the videos. It's really important because visual learner, you can kind of see that person you watch the video of going through it step by step, mixing this together or doing this and that, and then you can kind of see that in your head in the test, and then you just write down what you're seeing. So it's nice and easy if you're a visual learner. If you're not a visual learner, a really good way I found of doing it is flowcharts. So you add this to this and add this to this, and then you build those links in between them. So I know when I was doing the food tests, knowing what chemical went with what, a lot of the time a certain compound you're testing has a B at the start, and what you're testing it with also has a B, and the colour change is also a B. There's your link.
There's your mental link.
Exactly, yeah. So it's building up those and then putting them in the story of the video, and you can kind of, if your mind works that way, if it doesn't, find a different way and use that. But that way is a really good way of bringing it all together. A
little exam tip there, just you mentioned flowcharts. If you are given a practical to write out, writing it as a flowchart is absolutely fine. It's still mark worthy because the content's there. I'm going to put you on the spot, gents, a little bit, and just ask you, if you were to think of one thing that you did that actually made a difference, what would you say it was?
Time. I put the time in, and it's such a simple thing. It's not there's no special, formulae, or there's different methods of learning things, and once you find what works as soon as you can, just repeat it. But it's time and repeating it and going, okay, I know flashcards work for me, I'm going to use flashcards, and not be like, well, maybe I'll try and do this time. When you know the flashcards works, even if you don't like doing it, just do it, drill it into your head and just repeat it.
I fully agree with that. I think the biggest difference you can make is actually starting, because the moment you start to build momentum. Like taking the sort of time out of your day to be like, I'm going to sit down for 5 minutes, I'm going to try to and build out a plan. You might not want to start revision that day, but as long as you make yourself a structure and commit to that structure, I feel like that could help you out massively.
For me, I would say the single most helpful thing would be spaced repetition. I think you can do that in a lot of different ways. For example, there are flashcards you can use and apps you can use them. So Anki in particular does spaced repetition, and it means that you're not just covering the content in one block of time and then leaving it for a year until you start stressing about it because you've got the test the next day, but you're going through it as the year progresses, and that means that it's constantly being refreshed in your brain, and I think that really makes it stick.
Yeah, I think having, like you said, you mentioned Anki's so useful, because if you can find an app that takes the pressure off you being accountable for the whole specification and trying to cover it all, because you look at your, I don't know, phone or something, or look through the textbook and you think, how am I ever going to manage getting through the whole thing? And you go onto Anki and you download some flashcards someone's already made, and they've made 2,000 flashcards. You just got to do them all.
You don't have to spend hours
exactly. You have to just,
it all.
It's that using, there's so many resources. It's so easy to just find something someone's already made. Obviously check that it's all okay. You could probably go ask your teacher. They'll probably be happy to go through that and make sure it's all okay. And then just use that, because it takes the pressure off. I spent a lot of the pressure I put on myself was, when am I going to revise? How am I going to revise? And what am I going to use, without actually revising? So a lot of my time was wasted. Whereas if you find that resource and then just go with it, ask your friends, work together, help each other, sit down at lunch, and then that takes the pressure off trying to figure out how to learn, and then you just learn it.
Well, saying that, I'm going to put you back on the spot again, because thinking about, you've just been talking about what did work. What about things that you tried that you thought, actually, this just is not helping? Was there anything in particular that you did that you're thinking, yeah, that's not actually good for me?
For me, what I found was that mind maps and drawing things out didn't really help me. I feel like for me, I had to actually sort of go through the content step by step. Sort of like kind of brute force learn it, but kind of not. I had to sort of go through the content systematically, like this is this, and this links to this like this. For me, sort of like going a bit unguided, drawing up mind maps, it didn't really click for me. So having a bit of structure definitely helped me with a revision massively.
For me, I would say it's just reading textbooks, reading articles. I think that although it can help your understanding, which is really important, it's quite passive, and I think lots of students underestimate the fact that you need to be doing active recall, active work. That's what flashcards help to do. But if you're just reading a textbook and maybe highlighting or reading your notes, you're not reinforcing it in your brain and you're not challenging yourself. And when you get to the exam, they're going to be asking you active questions to make your brain think. So if you can get used to that from revision, it's really useful.
Yeah, I'd say another big thing, I still do it now, which I really need to work on, but just writing notes in class, yes, it's helpful, yes, it gets the content down, but the teachers are teaching you the content which is in the textbook. That's the point. They're delivering those lessons to help you learn it, but it's all there. So find a way where you taking notes in class, you can tell that it's going in your head. You're not just mindlessly writing stuff down. I've heard that some people bring a massive set of blank flashcards. They might bring 20, 30 into a class, and then whenever there's a question on the board, they write the question on the flashcard, put it in their bag, and then their revision later is going back, trying to answer the flashcard, and if they don't get it, writing the answer on the back and using that as a further resource. So yes, do what the teachers tell you in class, do the activities and things, but if it's just note-taking, like you were saying, you're not going to read through that again, and it's just suddenly going to go into your brain. So you need to produce that active recall.
That's great. I think that's a really positive message, just in terms of taking control of your own learning, like actually taking charge of it. I'm going to talk about past paper questions, because it seems to be one of those things that it's like a pain process that you have to go through, and it can take up a lot of time. Did you find looking at past paper questions and mark schemes useful?
Absolutely. I think that doing past papers helps to expose yourself to a new variety of questions, and in the exam, not everything is recall, a lot of it is application, especially for biology. And so that means that when you do past paper questions, you're exposing yourself to these application questions that you can then know how to answer in the exam. And I think that the most important thing is then, after having done those past papers, look at mark schemes, analyse where you went wrong or what things you said that achieved you that mark. Because in the exam, they want you to say a specific answer. And so if you know what they want you to say, you're guaranteed to get the mark.
I feel like as well with past paper questions, shout out to physics and maths tutor for the massive bank of exam questions they have. And there's only so many questions that no matter what specification you're on, they can ask you. And most of the questions, even at A-level, they tend to be unrepeated. They might be slightly different, they might be with a different example, but they're all covering the same points, they all want you to say the same things. And I feel like with exam paper questions, most people, they do it, they're like, oh, it's wrong, I'm green pen it, and they just go on. What I did was that I took a picture of them, I put it into a massive Word document, and going towards exam season, I would go through that Word document, like maybe 5 or 10 questions every day, work through them, be like, okay, cool, I got this wrong, why did I get this wrong, and how can I improve it? So next time, when I encounter a similar question, I get that right.
So I'm just going to ask you a couple of final questions. What advice would you give to a year 10 who's just starting their GCSEs?
Annoyingly, no one's going to like hearing this. It's the same advice that you're told when you start the school, when you go in, people say start early. It's that annoying thing of the majority of us only realise it when it's too late, and then your brain you shift your mindset towards, you'll get focused on GCSEs and you'll notice your friends start focusing. And key thing is you're in year 10. You've got the time to do it, so put it into place. And if you get into that rhythm early and it becomes part of your timetable, you get home, it's 2 hours, you've already had 5 hours worth of lessons. And if you're working hard during those school hours, work hard during school, do you a couple hours after school, then relax and get into that rhythm, because as the pressure builds, because it will in school, you'll be given a bit more homework, this and that and the other. And just focus on making sure you get the hours done. And the other thing I did was start a timer when you're revising, and as soon as you go and do something that's not work, you pause it, then you start again, keep going, and a stopwatch. So let's say you revise for an hour, and it's been an hour, and I don't know, it could be really bad. You might have only done 23 minutes or something. And it just makes it clear and obvious to you how efficient you need to be working. And if you can get that sorted in year 10, you'll be completely fine by year 11.
That's great.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's all about the dedication and the work that you put in from the beginning, constantly going through the content. Yes, you're spending a lot of time in school learning the content in classes, but it's so important to consolidate that knowledge at home and make sure you keep on going over it so that you're used to that routine that you've created from year 10, and by the end of year 11, when you're about to sit your exams, you don't feel overwhelmed by the amount of work you have to do.
I feel like what's also important is doing little and often, because you might not want to sit down for 2 hours every day, get all this done, but if you spend maybe 15 minutes one day, 15 minutes the next day, to build momentum and build your reservoir of revision resources. I feel like going towards the end of your GCSEs, because it's a 2-year course, and going towards the end, you're going to have that massive bank, and you're like, wait, I might not feel like I've done much, but actually I've done all of this. And I feel like going towards your exams, you feel more confident. Because for me, I didn't like sitting down for 3-4 hours every day, studying for revision. I found like I would get bursts of motivation, and I turned those bursts into everyday sessions, like maybe 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there, to build momentum, be like, okay, cool. I'm going to hold myself accountable to make sure I get this done, because if I don't, no one else will.
And final question, what's your top tip to stay motivated when revision gets tough? Because it does, doesn't it?
I would say number one tip is understand when you're not learning, if that makes any sense. So I'll try and explain it. So you sit down, you start revising, and you know you're struggling to revise. Stop, 5-minute break, come back, try something different, see if it goes in. The amount of time that you end up spending, you'll go to your parents, you'll say, I've been revising for 4 hours and I'm not getting the results I'm getting. And it will be purely because the time you're spending is not going towards learning. So sit down, understand when you're in the zone and the motivation to learn, and then really focus down and try and extend that time. So you get half an hour, maybe you can go for an hour, and then stop, 5-minute break, come back. Your brain can reset in 5 minutes if you leave your room. Don't sit in your room, stick a YouTube video on, watch for 5 minutes, and then go straight back to work, because your brain won't feel reset because you haven't left the room. Another thing is, don't work and play in the same room. If you're sitting at your computer and you're playing games and then you suddenly switch to homework, your brain's like, whoa, what's going on? I can't deal with this. Go outside, I don't know, play some sport you like, go for a run, go for a walk, come back in and have your room somewhere to learn, or have the kitchen and somewhere to learn. So just find that space and try and separate them.
One of my tips, again, I don't know if you find this would work, but would be to get somebody to study with, just actually buddy up with a friend and work together, because you're saying about not revising, not using the time that you've got. actually they will help keep you on track.
Yeah, when you're not motivated, they'll be motivated. It just tends well like that. 2 people's enough. 3, even set up a group chat maybe, and then whenever you're revising, put on a message, say, I'm revising. It will feel a bit weird, but you'll see that message and you go, hang on a minute. This person's every single night sent a message, I'm revising from, I don't know, when they get home, 4:30 till 6 with breaks in between, then they eat dinner. And that kind of gets you going, okay, people are working hard. You can tell that they're working, you know they're working, and it will really push you to also do the same.
I think my number one tip to stay motivated would be understand why you are studying. What is it that you actually want to do? Is it that you want to go and study a particular course? Or is it that you want to go to college? Find out the reason why you're doing it. And that was my number one motivation, I think, because it's not a temporary thing. It's not, oh, if I can get over this small period of time, then I'll be okay. No, it's looking at the long-term goals and understanding the impacts that revision will have. But I think that during the actual revision period, treating yourself is really important. So spending time to go out with friends, going for a walk, having a coffee as a break, something that can change your mindset is really helpful.
I'm going to say, for me, one of the most important things was taking time to realise, okay, I'm starting to burn out. I need a bit to take a break and have a rest, because going through exam season, you have to sacrifice quite a bit. You might give up time with family, you might give up time with friends, but also don't give up too much, because exam season is only temporary. And these sort of connections that you might burn away during that time, they last forever. And also your health, that's something that you should definitely take care of, because I remember that one of my friends during exam season, he was stressed out, he was burnt out, all he was doing was revising, and he got a bit snappy, and I felt worried for him. So I feel like it's important to take care of your own well-being and the well-being of people around you, because those people are the people who are going to support you, who are going to help you, who are going to help you push through difficult times. And the other thing I'd say is build yourself an environment and a routine in which you can revise. For me, I'd like to sit down with a nice cold drink, sort of get myself into the mood, then start revising, because it's hard to go from like having the entire day at school with your friends to just coming home, opening up a textbook, starting to work through pages. So make yourself an environment where you feel comfortable and you actually enjoy revising, because honestly, I've learned to enjoy studying, and I feel like that's one of my biggest motivators.
Yeah, if you can enjoy it, it's not a chore, it's not hard work. Your brain's engaged, you're ready, you're like, oh, okay, this is interesting, this isn't as interesting, but I know I need to learn it, because like you said, you've got that job role, you've got that course you're going to. If you can set up that environment, get a cold drink, then when you sit down, you're like, okay, this is actually all right. I don't mind doing this.
And if you enjoy it, it's not really work.
Yeah, exactly that. And also, I did just want to say that I actually ended up enjoying studying quite a bit because of exactly those things, of setting up an environment that made me comfortable. Make sure you treat yourself.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. I think there's been some really useful tips, and thank you for your time that you've put in. If you found any of the tips that we've given you today particularly useful, then please do drop us a line at comments@thescienceedit.com. Also, if you've got any ideas of podcasts that you'd like us to produce for you to help you with your study, then please do let us know. And until next time, take care. Thank you.